Hey guys, just wanted to give you a quick rundown of what was going to happen today. Basically, I've got my mate Dan, who is a great painter and an even better friend, or as you may know him from the forums, Dan. He's basically going to show me a few tips on painting because I've always sort of been pretty much self-taught, just figuring out what works over the years as I painted more and more miniatures. So he's giving me sort of a more robust education in a particular style today. I was painting a Games Workshop Orc, and he was painting, I'm pretty sure, a Vitrix Viking, but definitely a Viking model. So I've uploaded pretty much the entire sequence. So there's a bit of sort of filler conversation. There's us sort of chatting a little bit in between, but I'll put in the video description specific links to where he talks about each step that we're doing in the process if you want to just chop and change to where he's giving the actual advice rather than hang out for the whole time. I hope you enjoy it, so let's get started.
Oh, well, maybe it'll help to first real quick tell you about what we're going to do here. I kind of briefly mentioned it on Discord, but with this painting technique, what we're basically going to do is block out all the colors on the model first, and then we're going to wash it, and then apply a highlight of the original color that we base coated with. Because what happens when you wash the model is it darkens the original color, and if you use enough wash, it's pretty substantially, so that original color can be then reapplied like it were a highlight. And from there, you can highlight as much as you want, but that provides a really solid base layer that makes a pretty cool standard for a tabletop model. So in theory, I got one I had in the oven here prepared. So this is what we're trying to get to. So this one is the exact same basic premise, though, where we block the whole model out, wash it, and then start building highlights up from that layer, again, starting with the first highlight, which is a reapplication of that same color again. And then, in this case, just going up a few more highlights. But the cool thing is you can choose how many highlights you want.
Okay, well, if we can get my painting to the level of that one you just showed me, today will be a great success.
Yeah, it's all right, one step at a time. So, which of those do you want to work on?
It doesn't really matter. This guy's kind of cool. Let's do him. Oh, where are we?
I like him. So,
okay.
There's when you're blocking your colors out, because again, the first thing we're going to do is block out all the colors for the whole model.
Yep.
When you're blocking colors out, there's kind of two rules for painting efficiently anyway. The first is you obviously want to paint the biggest surfaces first, but the second is that you want to apply paint to the lowest layers first. So in other words, like you're clothing the model, you're going to paint the skin first, and then like a shirt, and then a hauberk on top of that if you can. Just kind of work your way outward. So sort of balancing those two rules as you go. So what I typically start with is skin, just because, like, especially with this guy with his metal helmet, once you paint the metal helmet, it's going to be really difficult to go in and paint things like the eyes and the face and the hands and stuff behind the shield. So if you have a skin color in mind for your orc, perhaps we can start there.
Okay. Yep. Let's do some kind of green, I reckon.
There you go. I'm going to go with Kislev Flesh.
Then again, I am using these guys as succubi. Maybe even a purple. Let's go purple and see how it works out. If I make a terrible color decision that you're like, this will look stupid, just let me know. What do we got? What kind of paints do you use?
Almost all Citadel, because a lot of these are, I won't say old, but stuff that I've been collecting for a while. I've got a few from the Army Painter because for Christmas a couple of years back I ended up getting they have like a starter set for, I think here it's something like $75 or something incredibly reasonable. So I got it on a whim, and I'd say half the paints are really good. I was surprised by their metallics. Because that's something that in years past GW has always been top dog on, or Citadel, with their metallics sort of being the best.
Okay.
But I really found that the Army Painter metallic paints are great. And then, but it's weird because like some of their paints, there's a couple of greens in particular, a couple of reds are, I mean, maybe it's just my expectations, but they seem borderline unusable just because they come out so liquid. I don't know. It's so diluted. It seems doesn't matter how much you shake them. That's just not workable paint.
Okay. This
How
may
about
sound
you?
like a stupid question, but are you painting this directly out of the tub, or it's
Yeah, that's a great question. That's all I do to start anyway, especially for these base layers. There's a couple of colors that I'll dilute, but I won't use like a wet palette or anything. All I'm really doing is keeping my brush wet as I go. So you
okay?
can't see because it's off camera. But basically, all I'm doing is dipping it in the water, and then from the water, just kind of throwing it onto a paper towel I've got nearby and see if I can get it all in camera. Because it happens quick, just kind of do it unthinkingly. It's just something like that.
Okay.
Dip it in, that, and then I apply the color on. So the brush is wet, it's ready to go, and you can apply directly on.
Okay. And I noticed that your guy isn't white. You told me to undercoat.
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed that. Yeah, so I had mentioned in Discord, I prefer white for a number of reasons, especially when I'm painting this way, because it's much, much easier to apply color over white than it is over black. As you can see here, I'm already having to go back and sort of reapply a little bit of color just because painting skin tone over black is difficult. But also because one of the biggest reasons to undercoat with black is because it's easy to dry brush over, apply color over if you're not going to do what we're going to do, which is a heavy wash. And a heavy wash sort of eliminates those benefits because that's going to create your shading versus the black. Like in this case, if I was not going to do what we're about to do, I could just take silver and dry brush it over the chainmail, for example.
Yeah,
And
that's generally
that
how I would
automatically
do
creates
that
shading.
kind of metal.
Yeah. So yeah, if there are a good number of reasons to use black as an undercoat, but I think all of the benefits are sort of outweighed by well, the benefits of the technique we're about to use.
Okay.
So I would prefer white. The reason I'm not using white is because my white spray paint can malfunctioned this morning when I was trying to undercoat these guys. So I went with black because that's all I had.
Oh, I mean, fair enough. I mean, all that says to me is that my one's going to end up better. And everyone's going to be like, why did that guy listen to Dan? What's going on?
What color are you using?
I'm using purple.
It's just purple. What kind of purple is that?
Gene Stealer purple.
There it is.
Yeah, because actually what I was going to ask you when I was talking about paints was,
Yeah.
like, this is a layer paint of the Citadel range. And I wasn't sure if that would be a dumb thing to use straight up. Because I know
No,
they're...
if you haven't used them a lot, they have their base paints, which are fantastic. They really are for sort of one coat applications for things, even crazy stuff like I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Iron Rock Skin. I guess I'm going to try to pronounce it. But these like lighter tan colors, which are normally notoriously difficult for applying, especially over a dark undercoat like black. It's sort of like a one shot, and you've got a pretty solid base layer down. The only problem with them, like you alluded to earlier, is that it really is the kind of thing you need to play with a little bit to get the dilution right, because it can also come out very thick because they're just super heavily pigmented paint. That's how they work. So as a result, you kind of have to, again, have a palette nearby maybe, or just keep your brush really wet.
Okay. Yeah, because how I've normally done it is basically taking a bit of the paint, putting it in a little, I don't know, this is like a chocolate mousse lid, and then mixing it with water, basically. Pardon, sorry?
It's a formal Citadel wet palette.
Yeah, like I mix it with water on that, basically. And then...
Yeah.
But everything that I've done with painting is literally just like me figuring things out on my own. I don't think I've ever actually learnt any formal skills.
No, and that's the best way to learn it, through trial and error, practicing things, and picking things up from other people. When you get to the highlight stage with painting this way, a wet palette like what you had there is really helpful, especially for blending colors. Because honestly, I've found that the best highlights for a lot of things is the color you're using plus a little bit of white or bleached bone or just a little bit of something like that mixed in. And a palette obviously is the best way to do that, so that you're not, like jumping from one dark color to a really bright color just because that's the next color that's out of the pot from Citadel.
Right. Okay.
So a lot of blending with highlights.
I don't actually have that much skin on this guy, to be honest.
Neither do I.
Yeah, surprising. See how this works out. Purple seems like a very bold choice.
It is bold. I like that though.
Okay. So I've got my. Oh, can we focus on him?
There he is. So what I would do next is some kind of cloth. It looks like you got a little bit of cloth on yours, right?
Oh yeah, there's a lot on his pants, and there's a little bit underneath the armor for sure.
Yeah. So I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna paint his shirt. I'm gonna go with a tan color here.
Yeah, I was thinking something fairly plain as well. Where do we got it? Did you choose Rakarth Flesh? Ah.
Good. Is that what you picked?
Yeah.
Great minds. Yeah, this is like a tan gray color. I love this color. I look for reasons to use it. And because it's a base color, it's super easy to apply.
This is basically, so the way I painted my ogres when I started Warhammer Fantasy in 2013 was just Rakarth Flesh with no water, at all on the skin, and then Agrax wash over it, and hey, that worked out really well. This is easy.
Yeah, it's a great color. There's only a couple of colors there. When I start running low, it's I got to get to the store right now, and obviously it's Agrax Earthshade, black, white, and then it's Rakarth Flesh.
So if you've got belts and stuff, or I don't know, a necklace or something, when do you generally pick those details out, or would you sort of not bother?
No, those are last for me. That's one of the very last things I'll do is I'll go in and do I don't know, we'll call them trim stuff like that. And the reason for that is because as we're painting outward like this, you can kind of be a little bit careless as you go and paint over things like belts. You can see I'm kind of splashing all over the place here as I go. But knowing that we're going to come back with another color to cover that up. So, for example, with this guy with his chainmail, he's got belts to go over the chainmails. What I could just do is paint all the chainmail and the belts in whatever silver color I go with, and then at the very end come in and paint brown. So it speeds things up a little bit, especially when you're painting 20 of these things at a time.
Okay.
Where you don't have to pick details out as you go.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I do it as well, actually. So that's a good endorsement of my normal strategies.
You go. See, you don't need help at all, man.
Now, when we get to the highlight stage, and I'm all right, this is a concept you need to explain to me from the ground up. Surely you mean dry brush, right?
That's right. Like that, but different.
It's like that, but for adults. I'm probably going to do his boots a different color as well.
Sure.
Would they be, I don't know. So his boots also have armor over the top of the front of them. I assume I'm using the same theory of I would do the boots at the same time as the cloth or whatever, and then the armor over the top.
Yeah, that's what I would do. Especially since it looks like he's got a lot of armor on him, like mine does. Maybe we'll go in with metal at the we'll close to the end. We're working our way out here.
I actually normally do all my medals first on models because I find, because I do mainly just do dry brush for them. It's I struggle to be neat.
Yeah.
So if I do them first, it's sort of I can, as you said, it's hard to do the face or whatever when you've done all the helmet and everything. But I'm like, well, I can't do the helmet and keep the details once I've done the helmet.
Well, and it depends on the model too, because like I just painted a bunch of Perry Men-at-Arms, like the foot Men-at-Arms are all metal, and that's, I would say, 80% of those models is just silver. So that's exactly what I did. Is I painted all the metal first. I went through and just bashed it all out, knowing that essentially everything else is just picking out details, like we were talking about with belts and whatnot.
Okay.
So there are some models where that premise, where you're kind of working your way outward, doesn't really work as well, or at least there's a more efficient way in that case, which is painting whatever color majority of the model is going to be covered with first.
Okay.
So whenever you're done with your shirt, my guy has some pants. And
my shirt and pants are just the same color. I'm assuming he's wearing a onesie.
Yeah, well, I'll knock some pants out here real quick.
Okay. Well, I'll just grab a brown to do the boots.
Yeah, great. I'm probably gonna end up doing the boots the same color as my belt, so I made mine last. But while you're doing your boots, I'll do my pants real quick.
I mean, I'll probably do my boots same color as my belt as well. So if you're gonna wait, I will wait.
So I'm gonna do another brown color here. XV88 is what I'm going with.
Oh, that's not one of my favorites. I'm more of a Baneblade brown kind of guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Baneblade brown a lot. I've also been using Steel Legion Drab a lot. It's pretty comparable to Baneblade, but it's a little bit darker and it's the base color, so it's super easy to apply.
Okay. I'm just gonna pop my bloke up to the camera so people can see where all the cloth is. It's barely distinguishable because it's...
No, it's looking great.
Yeah. When I started out, my definite, top paints were just Rhinox Hide Brown, Rackhouse Flesh, and Agrax Earthshade. And I was like, that's all I need to paint an ogre. Just brown skin and a wash.
That's pretty much it. Okay, so I've got a ton of silver on my guy, so I think I'm going to switch here because we're pretty much out to the outer layer at this point, so we have to make it this. So I'm going to get silver out and start working on that.
So are you thinking like a lead belcher type?
Yeah, that's exactly what I would do. I'm going a little bit brighter because my lead belcher's pretty dried out. So I'm going to go to those aforementioned Army Paint or War Paints. This is plate mail metal, but it's pretty close to lead belcher. This is probably more like, what's the next step up? Iron Breaker? Is that the next one in this Citadel range?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that only because I've got Ironbreaker. So, generally, I would not paint metal over white like this. Am I just doing the same sort of thing where I'm going a blocked color?
Like what you might normally do over black, which is probably more akin to like a dry brush or an overbrush. You're gonna paint this time don't leave gaps where you normally would, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yep.
So you can see and again, it's not a science really, because you're eventually going to wash this thing anyway, so you don't have to worry about filling every little crevice, but you are going to paint in areas where you would normally leave some shading if you were painting over black.
Okay. Easy done.
When did you start playing? Painting, I guess.
When I was a kid, I don't know, 10-ish, there was the, I don't know if you guys had it there or if you were aware of it, but like a magazine for Lord of the Rings miniatures.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what it was called. something
There's an
something.
Italian one I've heard of, the Agostini, and
Uh,
I know,
it was
yeah, I
something.
know.
It was like something in Middle Earth. It was like a GW thing, basically.
Oh, cool.
Um, but so like every issue came with like a model or two. It came with a guide on how to paint them, um, and like some sort of battle scenario type things, and like some terrain making workshop type ideas.
Yeah,
Um, and I got into it then, but I never really played. Um, I just collected and painted, and that was cool. And then
yeah,
I like sort of drifted out of that, as I think most people sort of do, drift in and out. Um, but got back into it like just after high school, a year after high school. I was talking to my friends who I play Dungeons and Dragons with, just going like, "Hey, I want to do this. If anyone's keen, like, I don't really care which game we play, but I want to actually play the game this time." Um, and then like some of them got into it, and they chose fantasy, and I was like, I don't care. I don't know any of the stories. And picked ogres because at the time I was going with uh, not an obsession, but like all of my games. I was like, nah, I just want to be the biggest thing. Like I was playing
yeah.
Dark Souls, and I was like, cool. I'm not gonna do lightly armored rolling around guy. I'm gonna do a guy with an enormous shield, an enormous weapon, and then the biggest armor I can possibly find. So I was like, the ogres are the biggest guys I can find, so I'm gonna go with them. Um, and then my D&D friends sort of drifted out of the hobby, but I'd met other people, um, so I continued because I was enjoying it, and like
Yeah.
they're now like some of my closest friends. um, like if I was sort of the friends that I see the most often and hang out with the most often, 80% of them would all be from the hobby.
Yep.
What about you?
Yeah, I was 12, and my brother, we had a store here called Hobbytown USA, which is like a hobby and model shop. And my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, he had gone there to look at RC cars, like radio controlled cars that people can
Yep.
sleep up and stuff.
Yep.
And so he brought home a magazine from Hobbytown to show me these RC cars that he wanted to get into with me as well. And I took a look at the magazine, and all I could see were, at the time, I think it was like 6th edition high elves specifically that were in this magazine. And there was a lot of other like Games Workshop uh, metal figures, especially, but just because it was the beginning of 6th edition. But I remember seeing all these figures and being like, I don't really want to do RC cars, but I do want to do that. So I strong armed my brother into collecting his. And of course, we had no idea what we were doing. Like you said, we didn't really play. I remember a lot of games where it was like my 12-year-old interpretation of the rules, and it always resulted in me beating up on my brother. He had like orcs, and he had dwarves and like, some wood elves in one army, and I had the undead and an empire cannon, and somehow I always won. So he stopped playing mostly because I was a jerk about it. But I continued on with it, and I ended up finding some friends at school who played 40K, and then they got me into 40K, and I got them into fantasy. So we all kind of grew organically that way, and then we found a couple of hobby shops. One of which that I ended up working at actually when I was 16. I think that was not my first job, but my first regular job, not just like a summer position. I worked at a comic and game store for 3 years, which was really cool because that's like not even work, man. Just being able to like play games and paint miniatures and get paid money to do it. So that was pretty cool. And then I've been playing ever since.
Okay.
On and off, like I said, like there were some lulls, just especially relating to like life events, like getting married and having kids and stuff. But I remember my mom. I think it was on my like 19th birthday or something. She asked me. She said, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I said, well, "I'm 19. I don't really care." And she said, "No, I want to get you something that you'll you really like. Like, I don't want it to be a practical gift. I want it to be something that you want. And I think she'd had it in her head like that I wanted like an iPod or something. And what I really wanted was like Empire Nightly Order box. Like, give me some of these miniatures, and she did begrudgingly. But I remember her telling me when she gave them to me, like, I really thought this was like a 12-year-old damn thing. I didn't think this was going to be something I'd still be buying for you when you're 19. So, anyway, here I am, 30-something, and still painting miniatures.
So, joke's on her.
That's right. So I've got most of my silver blacked out. I don't know how you're doing.
I've got a little bit to go.
Yeah, do you think?
So, chat amongst yourselves, kids.
Yeah. So what up? What other armies?
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I noticed that evidently you didn't perfect the same art with your brother that my brother did with me. So if you keep beating him, he's going to get discouraged. So you have to carefully manage the beating him and let him win just enough that he wants to keep playing.
I have a distinct memory of even where I was. It was like in my grandmother's dining room, and I had set up all these figures, and it was and a half after we had first gotten this introduction to the game, and I'd been haphazardly collecting things, and I remember my brother had definitively told me, like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is stupid. I don't like painting these figures. That's all you. You can have them all. And I set everything up in the dining room, and I brought my brother in, and I'm like, listen, we're going to play this game, and you're going to like it, because I think I said something like, I'm going to let you win this time. He still didn't want to play. So, yeah, like you said, it was lesson learned, but too late.
I have a memory of when I was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 or something. I was playing Nintendo with my brother. We were playing Pokemon Stadium, and I must have been getting frustrated at always losing. All the we were playing like a mini game thing, because we didn't play much of the actual like Pokemon battle things in that. There was like some mini game section that we'd always do. But I remember it was morning, and I managed to beat my brother, and I ran to my mum and like knocked on the door to the bathroom because she was having a shower, going like, Mum, I beat Justin.
No, brothers.
Yeah, we have the opposite experience though, because you were the older one who was always winning.
Yeah. So while you're painting your silver there, I'm going to real quick knock this guy's beard out, because I don't expect you have a beard. Well, I mean that you're... don't expect that your model has a beard.
Yeah, these orcs, unfortunately, are surprisingly hairless.
Yeah. I was reading that they're going to do a Lord of the Rings TV series starting next year, I think. They just wrapped filming on it.
Oh, like Amazon, right?
Yeah. And supposedly it's going to be if not one of the most expensive TV shows ever produced, which, take from that what you will, but maybe that means it'll be, well, if not well done, well produced.
Yeah. I don't have high hopes, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just expect most fantasy things to be bad.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why people like The Witcher so much, when I was like, this is not good.
Yeah, I haven't even tried. I mean, the truth is I'm not super into video games anyway, but I know of it, and I don't know, like, I keep seeing it on Netflix and passing by it, and I'll hesitate for a second, like, maybe I should give this a shot, but then, I don't know, the clips and what I've seen, I don't know, it's not enough to draw me in. I think that maybe if I played the games or something, I would have more of a connection to it, but...
I haven't played any of the games, but it was based on books first, I know.
Oh, really? The books came second, that makes sense.
Which... one of my friends loves the book, or the book series, And another one of my really close friends said that he got it because him and his now wife really liked the games, and read it, and he was like, "These are like the worst things I've ever read in my life." So I think I'm pretty much set on the metal side of things.
Cool. So as I said, we're kind of on like the trim stage here, where you can kind of jump around. Like, there's no correct next step. You're just trying to block the whole thing out. So for me, I've got two areas here. I've got like the back side of the shield, and I have the I don't know, shaft on the axe here that I want to paint real quick, probably in the same color. And I've got one of my favorite colors for like spear shafts and stuff like that is Xandri dust.
Okay.
Just because once you wash it and highlight it up, I think it's a really cool, like, I don't know, it's a sort of in between color between brown and yellow.
Okay. I might try that because I've got a wooden shield to do. So would we do, like, I've got basically the shield, the boots, and the belt to do. Would you just wait until, like, are we doing the boots like as the last step, or as like after washing and stuff as well?
No. We're gonna block all the colors out, so that is something you're gonna have to do before we wash it.
Okay.
Let's get the boots.
I'll get a color for that as well then. Look, just in honor of you, I'll use the XV88 for the boots.
Wow.
So, don't say I never do things for you.
I'll have to keep that in mind.
I played another game last night. I don't know if you've seen on the Australian Discord the tournament I'm running, the Wizard Wally thing.
Yeah, I've been watching the banter mostly.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so I played my game for that. My Wally threw himself into the warp turn 1. Like top of turn 1 too. I cast one spell, and I was like, well, my wizard's dead. But
Okay.
I thought it was a little bit funny because it's against Infernal Dwarves again, which means that after I do a battle report for that, I'll have 6 games up, and 4 of them will be against Infernal Dwarves. Which is an army as well that some people are like, oh, like no one in my area plays this. I've never seen it in action.
That's wild. What path did you choose for Wally?
Witchcraft.
Oh, cool.
Purely because I've always wanted Witchcraft on Beastman.
Yeah.
And even the fact, like, so Wally's just like a human dude, basically, so, and you can't give him any gear. So he's quite vulnerable if you get him into combat, which is a bit more of a limitation around how I would like to use Witchcraft, with the fact that I really like the random move spell, but it's only 18 inches. So on a toughness 5 with a distracting weapon, Beast Herds Shaman, I'm like, that's fine. That doesn't matter. I'm going to send him forward anyway. But with Wally, I need to be a little bit more creative in how I can get him into relevant positions.
Sure, especially with short ranges on Witchcraft.
Yeah.
That's not an easy feat.
But I didn't have to worry about it last night because I just had totems left after turn 1. Fortunately, though, I stopped his unit of flintlocks from shooting for 1 phase.
Well, don't say he didn't do anything.
Yeah, it was a worthy trade-off.
That's right. Yeah, what is he, 400 points or something like
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite funny, actually, because people are, like, trying to find... Not everyone, but, like, part of the fun is trying to find the most sort of broken way to use Wally. So a lot of people have gone Druidism with either Warriors or Infernal Dwarves. And it's actually quite funny because a few of the things that I've heard was, like... that it seems really broken, but then you actually try and use it, and... because you need to be aware of how vulnerable Wally is. It's actually quite hard to use, particularly because, again, Druidism's really short range.
Right.
Also, I've just realised that I've had the entire time my camera's not in full screen. So, it's had, our text chat below. This one needs more
So since you're closer to being done, I'm just gonna quick knock out a shield here because I get a Viking guy, so it's colorful shield.
So when you do your freehand, I assume that comes like after everything else.
Yeah, it depends. I'll probably keep this one pretty plain just for the sake of the video. But when I say it depends, like I think of a specific example. But there's sometimes what I'll do is I'll put I don't know, like a generic shape or like roughly what I'm going for down, because then when you wash over it sort of ties the colors together. It doesn't look like it's tacked on top of what you've done with your base layer first.
Okay.
I know that's kind of a nebulous answer, but yeah.
No, it makes sense. I think that like with an example, it would be like, yes, I understand exactly what you're doing, but like the concept is actually pretty clear. I've also just realized I've actually got hair to do as well.
Oh, he does have hair.
He's got like hair coming out the back of his helmet. Do you pick out like mouth and eyes and teeth at this stage?
Well, yes and no. So what I would do instead, I wouldn't do eyes. I would do like teeth. There's a lot of them because when you paint those and wash them, depending on how big they are, like that might be it. Like you probably don't need any highlights after that.
Okay, then I will also get colors to do them. So I got to find something to do the hair, and then I'll get some mouth/teeth colors. Usually I do the face like absolutely last.
Yeah, and that's where if you're doing any detail painting, that's what you'll end up doing. What's weird about this, again, is that you're blocking all the colors out, and then you're going to wash it. And then basically, once it's washed, you're going to look at and decide where you want to put any additional details.
Okay.
So this is all about getting a solid base layer in. So like here, for example, I've got just a couple tidbits of gold.
Okay.
So I'm just blocking because it's all going to get washed.
Cool. So, yeah, I mean, look, while we're just still learning this, I won't be too concerned with making sure it's exactly correct.
Mm-mm.
If you were to, like, so if I wanted to do, like, black hair, how would you normally do that? Would you just go, like, a straight black, or would you go more grey?
Yeah, if you wanted to do black hair, I would just probably paint it black, or a very, very dark gray, perhaps. But if you wanted it to be, like, really black by the time that you're done, I would just paint it black. Now, the wash isn't going to really do much of anything, but that's okay, because you can still paint it. It'll still kind of blend the colors together a little bit, and then when you apply a highlight, instead of just straight black, highlighting, even a washed straight black won't do anything. But what you can do is mix in a little bit of a gray color, just a straight gray, or you can do kind of a bluish gray color. But we'll get there. But yeah, the short answer to your question is I would paint it black.
Okay.
What's key in this step, as you just kind of mentioned, is that it's not really about getting everything perfect. The only thing that really matters is making sure that your colors are all solid, that you have a nice even coat, because this is going to form the basis for everything that comes after, depending on how much detail you want to put into it.
Okie doke. Well, if my results aren't exactly as good as yours, like, you're fired.
I guarantee it.
I believe we signed a contract before this, right?
Yeah, we did. It was all in American English, though, so I figured you wouldn't be able to read it. So that was my mistake. Let's see.
It was all those places where you use Z's and we use S. Despite it making a Z sound.
I've gotten to the point now where I type on the keyboard so much that my phone try to correct me anymore. Spelling of things like color. Like before, it would try to autocorrect it back to COLOR, but now it seems like it doesn't even try anymore. It's been broken.
I was actually quite happy when I was reading things. I think when I was on Rules Clarity team, and it was confirmed that the project's preference is British English, not American English.
Well, we're outnumbered internationally in terms of English speakers, so that's fair. So I'm going in with my, I don't know, I'll call it leather colors because I'm painting all my like belts and boots and stuff. I'm using Rhinox hide.
One of my old favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Two of my
So
favorite.
you're painting Lord of the Rings models for your demon army, right?
Yes, yeah. So these are going to be. Are they still called succubis? I think they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are going to be my succubis. Not because they're a particularly good approximation of what I think a succubi should be, but because it's a Lord of the Rings army, and I didn't want to buy models, so I was like, what can I use? But mainly the army, like the bread and butter of the army is the fact that like the big things look appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
The infantry less so.
No, it's one of my favorite things to do is sort of figure out multiple armies that you can use models for. That's why I've gotten to the point now where I'm kind of basing everything the exact same way. Be it my Empire mercenary guys or my Viking models. It's just everything's getting the same base treatment so that it can all be kind of used in multiple factions if need be and all sort of look coherent together on the field.
There's a few guys in my group who've like that's something that they do quite a bit these days, where they're like, all right, every time I build an army, it has to be usable for two things. Like Beastmen Orcs, and well, a lot of people do chaos something.
Mm-hmm.
I've in fact got like basically a chaos Beastman army because I have enough conversions, and it's like they work quite well together for a lot of the models. Like you could easily use the same model for a Gortak as a Feldrak Elder, I think.
Right. Yeah, for me, that's one of the coolest things about the Ninth Age versus playing Warhammer Fantasy, especially going to things like tournaments. I remember at, I think it was a Brawler Bash tournament back in, we'll call it 2014 or so. And I remember having Gripping Beast Viking models that I used for Chaos Warriors. And in friendly games, it was no problem at all. But as soon as you go to like a GW sanction game, you can't do that. Fortunately, I knew the guy that was running the event, so he turned the other way. But he wasn't happy about it. I didn't even think about it. I showed up with this army of Gripping Beast models, and he said, "You're really not supposed to be playing with that."
Yeah.
So yeah, it's refreshing to be able to buy whatever you want, paint whatever you want, 3D print whatever you want. If you're a cool guy like you with a 3D printer.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually just gonna say, like, I don't really need so much, I don't think, to do the dual army thing, purely because... Oh, my camera's just stuffing up. Go back in place. Purely because I've got the 3D printer, so it's sort of like, well, I can just print as many models as I want.
All right. I think I'm about there. You all blocked out?
Yeah, I'm set.
We got one more thing to do here. So if you don't have it out already, what you're going to need is whatever... I don't know if you have Agrax or Earthshade.
I've got Agrax and I've got Null, and I've got a range of others if we were thinking one of them.
Cool. We're going to stick to Agrax then.
Agrax.
So keep it simple.
Okay.
And again, what's key is just making sure you've got a solid base layer. Make sure that everything has some paint on it. And, oh shit. Let's see. Cool.
We probably missed a small spot near his nose. In fact, you know what? We probably need a little bit more down there. Do you normally do your bases after you've done all the painting?
Yeah, that's the last thing I do.
Okay. And, like, is the base that goes on the base that you're going to keep him on for when you eventually do it, or is that more sort of like just while you paint him, you have him on that?
No, this will be the one that I end up painting up for him. For a time, I had been like putting sand down first, and having that all in place, and then just sort of painting it at the end. But the problem with doing that, I've found, is that if you already have it sanded at the bottom, and you're messing with a model like this, manipulating it, moving it around, is that right? The sand all falls off and stuff, and that's no good. So yeah, that's what I typically do. Is I'll use the base that I'm gonna end up, using the model on for playing with, but I won't put anything down on it until the very end.
Okay. Yeah, because I've always sort of been like, it's probably a slightly better result if you paint it and then like paint it and do a base separately and then put the model on the painted base. But then I'm like, then I have to paint everything before I use the model, so I can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, the only problem I've found with that too, in addition to like I want to be able to use the model, is that sometimes when I've done it that way, it looks just kind of like it's stuck on it. Like it's not in the terrain or part of the terrain. It's just sort of resting on top of the terrain. And
yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so I'm ready to go too, if you are.
Why does your guy already look so much better than mine?
It doesn't.
I guess because my guy's all silver. Yours looks a little bit more... Like there's more variation in your colours.
Yeah, well, we're about to equalize it. So I got Agrex Earthshade. This is actually kind of a hobo mix of Agrex Earthshade, and I had some Army Painter dark tone and soft tone, like in these squeeze bottles from the Army Painter, that were pretty useless for washes. And I was running really, really low on Agrex, so I just kind of mixed it all up into this one. I don't know. It's pretty close to Agrex. Straight up Agrex. All right, so this is where you're gonna have to trust me, because this is the part that is weirdest. But you're gonna load up more wash than you think is necessary, and you're just gonna basically glob it on.
Okay.
And once you're done sort of washing the whole thing, that's when you go back and prevent any pooling from happening. So what you don't want to have happen is a bunch of wash pooling on flat surfaces, because that'll dry in a very bizarre way and will make the next step difficult.
I think that was part of my strategy with my ogres, actually, when I painted their skin. I was like, yeah, pull on some flat areas, and then it makes it look a bit weird.
Well, as long as it's deliberate, that's different.
I mean, I don't know if it was so much deliberate as it happened, and I was like, all right, that looks fine. Let's just make sure we keep doing that.
So yeah, you're just gonna wash the hell out of the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Again, the only other thing to pay attention to is to make sure that you don't have pooling on flat area.
Pooling on flat areas, yep.
Yep.
Well, not 100%. See if you have a look and see if you reckon that. Oh, can we do it? Can we focus? It's not really going to be good. Because, the top of his leg, like the top armor on his leg, do you reckon that's sort of flat area pooling?
No, that looks fine to me.
Okay.
There's a lot of folds in that button.
Yeah, there is.
Well, when I say flat area, I do mean like the and stuff like that. Or,
Sorry, you just cut out for a second. What do you mean?
What's that?
You just cut out for a second. What areas did you mean?
Oh, I really just mean the front end of a shield or something like that. Or,
Okay.
Cloth or something that's out.
Okay.
So ideally, we would give these guys a couple hours to dry.
So when you say that, highlights, basically I have almost never done highlights. So a general guide of what we're doing would be handy.
Right. So with highlights, it depends on the surface that we're highlighting. So in this case, you and I both pretty much have skin, cloth, and some metal. So metal is highlighted a little bit differently, and we'll talk about that when we're doing it. But for highlights on something like cloth, for example, I'm trying to get this thing to focus. I don't know if you can see it at all. But
probably pretty much good enough.
Yeah, good enough. So on my Viking guy here, let's see if I can get yeah, that'll do. So remember, for this technique that we're using, we're going to go back in now and use the same color that we put in as the base color, because what we just did is we washed the whole thing and that darkened down that original color.
Yep.
So with Rakarth Flesh, for example, what I'm going to do is go in and basically you're looking for where the natural light from whatever you're painting under, whatever light source you're painting under, is kind of glinting off the model, and you're going to use that as a guide. and basically just apply your highlights at the upper portions of whatever it is that you're trying to paint. So let's start there. So I'm gonna grab my Rakarth Flesh, and I'll paint real close to the camera here to show you where I'm applying these highlights.
So your Rakarth Flesh, you're doing like the cloth, right?
Right, yeah, and it doesn't matter as much now in terms of working outward or inward or large surfaces, small surfaces, because we're not really getting into nooks and crannies anymore. We're going to leave the shadows in there. We're going to really just only be painting the outermost portions of the cloth or the skin or the armor, really just where the light would be hitting it in an extreme way. So again, let me see if I can get a good angle here. So I'm going to take my Rakarth Flesh. I can do this. So again, I'm not painting the whole thing. I'm really just painting the upper area there. So the part of the cloth that's going to be catching most of the light. And as I said, if you kind of manipulate the model in your hand, you'll see where the light's catching on the model.
Okay, so theoretically, so we're not. That's not the same for the metal, though. Hey.
No, metal behaves very differently, and we'll get to that.
Okay, so it might be hard to focus here. Sorry, let me just try this. So if I'm looking at this little dude, can we focus on this at all?
Mm-hmm.
Are we making it work? Okay, so now it's sort of focusing on my brush. So if we look at his butt,
yeah,
the old jump truck. Sorry, just focusing on my hand again. Let me... sort of. Would we be going... it's hard to see at the moment. Like...
Top. But basically, we assume that what the light source is, regardless of how we're moving it around in our hand, the light source is always coming top down on the model. That's the easiest way to paint. And you can see, like, the sleeve on this guy is pretty comparable to the pant leg that you're trying to paint there. So, what I'm going to do...
I guess sort of my question is more, am I highlighting the where the light is hitting the, like, sort of... Because the pants have folds. Like, the upper edges of the folds are obviously catching most of the light. But on, like, say, his butt, it's like a larger area with one part that is catching more light. But I'm not sure if I should do the larger area as a highlight or basically just the sort of most... The parts that are getting hit by the light the most.
Yeah, so flatter surfaces are the trickiest to do because, as you say, like, there's no fold that makes it obvious where I'm placing the highlight, but obviously some of this is going to be highlighted because it's this big flat surface that's mostly out in the open. The easiest way I've found to do that is just to start at the top and work down to sort of, it'll then make more sense if you need, because less is more when it comes to the highlighting this way. Because if you just repaint the same color over the entire surface, it won't look like a highlight. It's going to look just like that same flat color again. It's the darker color in the recesses that is making this work. So like with this guy, for example, I really don't have as flat of an area anywhere on here like you do on yours. But as I said, what I would recommend you start with is if you hold the guy away from you, and he's got his pant legs toward the top that are facing what we assume is sunlight coming down on him.
Yeah.
I would start by painting that first and then working your way down.
Okay. Well, we'll try it and we'll see how it works out.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And I don't know if you can see what I'm doing at all, but I'm really not painting much of it. Like, I would say that of that sleeve, I maybe just reapplied paint to 30% of it. Like, most of it is still that washed original color, all stuck down in the folds and darker areas.
I got a thinner brush. That's not good. Okay.
And again, the more you do this, the more intuitive it will be in terms of like where you're dropping highlights, and you won't overthink it, I'll say. It'll just kind of make more sense where you're throwing these highlights in. And the rule of thumb is, as I kind of alluded to, less is more. You don't want to paint the whole thing again, because it'll destroy the low lights, I guess you can call them, the shading that you did with the wash and the base color you put down.
Okay. Yeah, well, I feel like once I sort of look at this and see what works and what doesn't, eventually that'll just sort of become, I'll be able to identify what will work and what won't work. Whereas at the moment, it's like I'm doing it and going like, nope, that looks shit.
Well, you have to, I guess I'll say, like, trust the process too, because there's like intermediate steps here where it's not going to look right until you get to the end. So I guess I'll just say don't stress it.
I think the last time I was trying to do highlights was I was painting a Lord of the Rings model, and I was like 12 or something in the Games Workshop store, and the guy was trying to teach me. And I did it, and he was like, all right, now I think we should try and do highlights. And I was like, but I really like how it's worked out. I don't want to try a new thing that I'm not good at. Okay, well, this seems vaguely done-ish. I think I did a really bad line on part of his pants.
No, that's okay. So we're going to do one more highlight on top of what we just did, just for funsies. Because really, I mean, that's a passable tabletop model in terms of just that one color. If we did that for all the colors that we did, that's totally fine. Even the base color with the wash, throw some matte varnish on it and throw a base on it, that's going to be pretty good. So now it's just a question of how many highlights do you want to put on it. I tend to be pretty extreme with my highlights. But, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Rakarth Flesh, because I can't, at least I don't have in my collection, a natural highlight color for Rakarth Flesh. So as I had mentioned earlier, what I typically do for a lot of these colors, especially if I'm just doing base coat wash, reapply base coat, and then one highlight, what I'll end up doing is just mixing a little bit of white or like a cream color, something light that will brighten up the color that I'm working on a little bit. White.
And you do that on the Rakarth Flesh part like immediately, or would you do highlights on all of them and then go back with a slightly lighter?
I typically work one color at a time now, because everything's been blocked out, and as I said, we're not going into the recesses at all, so you're really not going to be touching any other colors, so you're safe to stick on one color if you'd like. Okay. And especially if you're doing like multiple highlight layers. So say, for example, I was going to do one highlight on this Rakarth Flesh, and then I was going to go one layer up from that. It's easier if you're just adding in more white, if that makes sense, rather than having to remix a new color each time.
Yep.
If you're working your way up the highlight, you just add a little bit more white, hit the next highlight. And it doesn't need a lot of drying time, because you're not really putting that much color down. So all I've done is added a little bit of white, and don't add too much at first. can always add more if it doesn't turn out right. Yeah, like on mine, I'm gonna add a little bit more white. So with this next highlight, because you already put a highlight layer down, with this next highlight, you're highlighting only the highlight, if that makes sense. So you're not going to touch any of the dark areas in the model. You're only going to be painting a thin line on the space that you just put the lighter color down on, if that makes sense.
But theoretically, I want to be able to see the first highlight underneath, like as in, I'm not covering the entire first highlight.
Right, same rule as last time, because if you color up the entire first highlight, then it,
there's no reason for us to put it there.
Yep. So yeah, if you're doing it correctly, then with each successive highlight, the amount of surface area that you're painting should go down pretty exponentially.
I think I'm just noticing that I painted some armor as cloth.
It's alright, man. It's your model.
We're just gonna run with that.
Yeah, I like it. So what I'm gonna do here, I had already gone through a quick highlight on my pants, my XV88. So I already have this pre-mixed Rakarth flesh, and again, I'm not fancy. I'm gonna use this Rakarth flesh color to highlight my XV88. I'm just gonna do something like that. It's kind of a lighter XV88 flesh.
Because you've already done the first highlight on your XV88.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I reapplied that XV88 color on its own. So now I've got XV88 and a little bit of the highlighted Rakarth flesh. And that looks pretty cool.
So, but you're so we started off with skin, but on the highlights we don't do it that way?
No, as I said earlier, it doesn't matter as much. I just had Rakarth flesh in front of me. That's the first thing I thought of. And the reason it doesn't matter as much is because we're not getting down into any of the nooks and crannies anymore. We're only really touching the uppermost parts of the model at this point. So we're not as concerned about bumping into things and smudging colors, just because we're only sticking kind of the outside of the model as we go around it now.
Okay.
But you could still, if you wanted to work, in to out, still a good rule to apply. But as I said, I'm just not as worried about it right now.
Okay.
How you looking?
I mean, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You don't sound happy.
I'm not 100% sure that I'm doing a very good job, but I want to see how it ends up.
Yep.
Like, I think I've highlighted his pants kind of poorly, but they also look like the least obvious ones to highlight.
Yeah, let's move on to metal then, because metal is very different, and in both of our cases, the bulk of the model, and
Okay.
I think easier to highlight. So
Okay, yeah, and then if you do need to go, I can finish this off and we can see how we're going.
right. So with metal is different than cloth, obviously, but it also light reflects off of it in a much different way. So what I tend to do, while with something like cloth or skin, I'll reapply the base color first as a highlight. What I tend to do with metals, gold and silver, is I will jump to the next highlight color and do a harsh highlight. Because with something like sword, it's very rare that there's going to be like a gradient of color. Typically you have this, what we already have, like a kind of base metal color, and there's just a sharp glint of light wherever, say, sunlight is hitting it or something like that. So with this, I used plate mail metal as the base color. So I'm going to jump right to shining silver.
Okay.
And
I think
you would go right up to lead belcher, or you were at lead belcher, you go to iron breaker.
Iron breaker.
Would be your next.
Which I've actually got. How handy.
Great.
Is there, so if you were, so with the Rakarth flesh, you were like, I'm going to mix some white in it. I assume you can't really do that with metal, right?
No, and that's why. I don't know where I was going with that. Oh, I was going to say gold, especially, is highlight, because really the only thing you can highlight it with is silver. And anyway, I find it's easier if you start off with a darker gold color if you've got a lot of gold, just because you can work up through the gold spectrum without having to dip into silver too much. So when applying this, you're going to be kind of even more extreme in your highlight placement because, and again, if you hold the model upright under the light, you'll already see where the light is, reflecting off of the model in a sort of extreme way. And that's basically what you're going to use as your guide on where to put your highlights, right? And some of it's obvious, like the top of the helmet is going to have much more than like underneath the chainmail under his arm. But you're going to find you got to be careful here because you're jumping a color here, the highlight's going to be pretty extreme, so you don't want to put too much down. You're basically just kind of like putting dots on in the places where you see the light bouncing off the model.
Okay, so when you say an extreme highlight, it's like
Yep.
a sort of a light highlight or a very discerning application.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different for me probably because I assume you've got like an overhead desk light.
Yeah.
I'm literally using so I've got to my right just an open window. That's just all the light that I've got. So
yeah.
um,
Right. These extreme conditions will hone your skills.
It's probably handy though that I've got quite a foldy metal.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of, the hardest thing really with painting anything is flat surfaces, because it's, as you had mentioned earlier with his pant folds, for example, on the back of the leg, it's really difficult to figure out without, wet blending something and really giving a smooth transition to the color. It's hard to put a highlight on without it looking, kind of jarring. But on the other hand, you can't just not put a highlight in because it's this large flat surface that is facing light, so it should have some kind of highlight. So yeah, like all the folds and crevices in your armor is a good thing because it gives you a lot to play with. See, as I said, we'll be sparing with this just because you don't need a lot of it, and you're really just picking up the edges that are catching light. And it's trickier for you because you're painting by window light.
Well, the desk that I normally use for hobby is actually quite handy. It's like a roller desk, like one of those ones that has like a shutter to sort of...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's got like a fluorescent light in at the top. So it's actually really handy when I'm doing hobby because it's almost like a built-in sort of light that with the shutter sort of a bit over the top makes it completely focused on just the work area.
Yeah.
And also looking at this, like the way I'm highlighting this metal,
Mm-hmm.
realistically my theory is I'm also sort of just going, well, if I dry brushed, it'd sort of pick up here.
Yeah.
So that's like I'm using the light, but I'm also sort of thinking like, well, the bits that are popping out are also theoretically being hit by the light. So
it should be the same thing, right? Yeah. So think it through logically. It's the same concept, right? Just what you said. The light's going to be hitting the same spots that if you were going through dry brushing it, you would be hitting. So while you're wrapping up your silver, I'm gonna real quick go in and do my gold. What did you painted most recently before this?
Oh, geez, that was a long time ago. I think it was that Lizardman guy that I showed you and I was really happy with. He was like a reward for me completing a few more models I needed to before that tournament. So I was like, yes, I can paint my Lizardman guy.
He's cool.
Whereas normally, like, I've got a dragon I really want to paint for my Sylvan Elves.
Yeah.
But I'm also sort of nervous about screwing him up. Whereas with the Lizardman guy, it's like, oh, fine, I 3D printed him. If I screw it up, I'll just print another one.
Another one, yeah.
Which is one of the good things about 3D printing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. It freaks me out. It was, I remember the first time my nephew has an Oculus. And I remember the first time I put that on, it was probably like 2 years ago. And it was a simple game. It was just like a space. Yeah, it was like a defense game. You're standing on a platform, and you've got like two blasters in your hand, and you're in space, and these robots fly up, and you just got to shoot them out of the sky. So it's a simple enough concept, but it was beautiful. And again, I've never had any kind of VR headset on before. So even just being in this alternate environment and looking around was cool. But I remember the moment where I really had, it was almost like a spiritual moment where I'm, fighting off all these robots and shooting my blasters wherever I can. And in this game, there's like a bullet time mechanic where if a laser blast is about to hit you, time will start to slow down a little bit. And I had this moment where I see this laser blast coming in, and I duck down, and I watch as this laser beam goes over where my shoulder should be, and I'm watching it the whole way as it's coming in, and watching it go past me over my shoulder and behind me. And I don't know, man. It was, I had to take the goggles off, because it's like, oh my god, like, oh, the future's insane. Holy. I just wasn't prepared.
I've played a little bit of VR at one of my mates' places, like the PlayStation VR.
Yeah.
He didn't have that like in particularly like visually impressive games, but
Yeah.
I just remember playing this one where it's like, it's almost like a white area with like sort of blank people coming at you.
Yeah.
But the way it worked is they like, the faster you were moving, the faster they moved.
Yeah.
So like people are coming at you, shooting at you, throwing stuff at you, or trying to like attack you with axes and hammers and stuff. But you had to sort of like be like, no, I'm gonna block you slowly. Because if you'd like reacted and were like, the rest of them had come forward so much quicker at you.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, I never played it, but I heard of it. And if you like held completely still, time would freeze, so it would give you time to kind of, get your wits about you.
Yep.
And talk things out.
So I think I've sort of got him with the I haven't done his feet actually. So much metal on this damn guy.
Yeah, man.
In fact, pretty much all of these guys are quite armored. Which is
more than I know.
It's really appropriate for my no armor 5-up ages succubus.
Yeah. Yeah, it's magic armor. Or this is a horrible skin growth.
In fact, the upgrade that I gave to my succubus in my list, all of them have Chilling Yawn, which is, I think, -2 or -3 agility to enemy units in contact. And like purely, I'm just sitting there going like, I just want to kill elves. That's all I care about. Okay. All right. I reckon his metal is sort of vaguely done.
Cool.
It's kind of hard for you to see, I think. I guess.
I can see him all right. It's looking great.
Yeah, but like the
So-
highlights in the light make it sort of hard to distinguish, I think.
It's all right. Again, it's going to have kind of a. If you're leaving a majority of the base color you put down with the wash on it in the recesses, like I mentioned, and you're only highlighting a small portion of it, it's going to have kind of a gritty look to it at the end because so much of it is kind of like that dirty wash color. And I think it ends up looking pretty cool and realistic as a result. And if you want, I won't do it on my model. But if you want, this is something I do with my wrap models, is you can take orange, any orange color you have, really. Like I've got, what is this? Troll Slayer orange. And all you'll do is like water it down to a ridiculous level. And it makes a cool rust effect. If you're into that kind of thing, I think it would look pretty cool with your purple as well.
Okay, I will try that on him then.
Yeah.
I assume that's at the very end?
Yeah, you can do it right now. So you're
do it.
going to take
Okay.
any orange color you want, and you're going to add water to it in a, I don't even know what kind of ratio I'm at right now, but it's a pretty extreme ratio of.
Like I'm basically making it a wash, right?
You're making it a wash, but it's going to be, I'll call it more of like an ink, because it's going to be a lot of water in it. Anyway, yeah, I don't know how to explain the consistency that you're looking for, but it's going to be very, very, very runny orange. It's a technical term, by the way.
Well, I mean, I'm here to learn from you. You can tell me what they can tell me anything is a technical term, and I'm not allowed to question it, right?
That's right.
So I believe what we've done here is called fucking it up.
It's also a technical term.
So how am I applying this?
Yeah, you're going to apply it similar to how you applied your Agrass wash, except that you're not going to let it touch the like highlights that you just put on. You're pretty much just going to paint it into the recesses.
Okay.
And it's not going to look great at first, but when it dries, it'll look pretty cool. Because the gradient will take hold when it actually dries. Right now it's going to look pretty extreme is the word I keep coming back to, but it's going to look harsh.
Okay.
How's it looking?
Seems okay. It looks harsh.
Yeah.
But also,
Yeah, and then
it also might be me applying too much paint.
no, I think it's gonna look cool when it dries.
Yeah, I got the slight issue that it's hard for me to pick up only a small amount of the paint.
Yeah.
Because it's so runny.
And that's okay. Because, as I said, when it dries, it's going to level out quite a bit. So even if you're getting it onto your highlight and it's going further than you intend for it to go, it's still going to look all right once it's dried. Just because the pigment is so thinned out right now that when it dries, it's just going to be kind of a subtle hue of orange.
Okay. So, what do we got?
Yeah, cool.
It's quite hard to see any orange, but there's a little bit poking through.
Yeah, a suggestion of orange.
Yeah. From a distance, it's much more a suggestion as well. Like when I look at it up close, I can sort of be like, oh yeah, I can see bits of orange, but from a distance, it's like, yeah, it's sort of just creeping through.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think in terms of, I did a quick, like the first layer on the XV88 in terms of highlighting. Yeah. I've still got skin and I've still got shield.
Yeah, so let's do skin. I actually knocked out my skin while you were doing your orange.
Okay.
So again, the same principle as before with cloth colors. You're going to take the same base color that you used before.
Yep.
And you're going to paint that as a highlight on the skin.
Okay.
And like I said, you're going to really leave a majority of that original color behind. You're just highlighting. Like on a face, it's going to be the tops of the cheekbones. It's going to be the forehead. Maybe if the chin juts out a lot on the bottom, if there's that much detail on the model. But it's also a busted up work face. So.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, you're expecting as high cheekbones.
Right.
You've got your Vikings with their Scandinavian good looks.
That's right. Of course, most of that's covered up by a burly beard.
I was watching when I was watching the Olympics, I watched the pole vaulting one night, and then I can't remember exactly what it was the next day, but regardless, the Swedish pole vaulter and the Swedish athlete in the next day, I was like, these guys are like far too handsome. Like, it is insulting how attractive these guys are. Out here doing my best. And I mentioned this to my girlfriend, and she was like, oh, yeah, those good sort of Scandinavian genes. Like, it's completely like Eurocentric standards of beauty. But there's a reason for it.
It comes from somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. Skin vaguely done, I think.
Cool. Now, if you'd like to do a highlight layer on that, I don't know if you have any purple that's kind of next in that succession, or you could mix in just a little bit of maybe not white, maybe like bleached bone color would be a good.
Oh, that was the white color I used for my my Rakarth flesh as well. Like, I pretty much use pallid white flesh every time.
Yeah.
Every time I need to mix white into anything, because I find that the slight sort of creaminess or less stark nature of it makes it a little bit
Yeah.
better to mix. Okay.
So what I'm doing with my shield here while you're working there
Yep.
is giving it a highlight, and it's a flat surface, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to kind of show how you highlight flat surfaces. And in this case, it's just you use really watered down paint, because what you're doing is, I had mentioned wet blending before, which is taking two very wet colors and then literally blending them on the model as you go. So you're trying to kind of replicate that effect by, similar to what you just did with the orange, incidentally, making the pigment count lower on the lower parts of the model on this flat surface, so that majority of the pigment's up here, and then thus it looks brighter. As we go down, it gets less and less concentrated.
So the lower down you go on the shield, you're
more
making it like more watery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of what I'm looking for. And truth be told, you don't really have to do this at all on a shield. Like, you could just leave it that flat washed color, and it would look perfectly fine, I think.
My shield's quite a bit more textureful than yours, because it's like a wood grain.
And you shouldn't be afraid to like switch brushes. You shouldn't be afraid to mix techniques. Yours, I would actually just do a straight up dry brush over what you did. So I would take like, what did you use? Not Bane Blade Brown. What did you use for your color? For the shield?
I used the Xandri dust.
Xandri dust. So you could, yeah, I guess you could just take like a bleached bone color, or you have Pallid Witch Flesh out already. So
Yep.
A good highlight color. Yeah, you can just take that and dry brush over it very lightly.
That's bold. It's a bold choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
A bold guy.
I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
How heavy of a dry brush am I doing here?
Yeah, not very is the short answer. You're going to basically work top down like you would with a highlight, but in this case you're dry brushing, obviously.
Okay.
And the cool thing about dry brushing too is that you can increase the inset. Like, you can start very light, and then if you hold the model back and look at it for a second, you can then come back in a little bit harder. You can also like vary the intensity over different parts of the shield. Like, you could very lightly dry brush the entire thing, and then start back up at the top again, and then do like a more intense dry brush just at the top where you think like sunlight would be touching it.
Okay. I have difficulty applying a neat dry brush.
Your brush is too small. That's part of the problem.
I've used bigger brush. I've used the specific GW dry brushes before, and I found that the problem was slightly exacerbated. Plus those brushes just pissed me off. They were just a bit too I don't know. They were a bit too hard for me.
Yeah.
And I found that it was difficult to like clean and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the key to dry brushing, regardless of is just to have very little paint on the brush, which sounds obvious, but in practice, getting it to where there's basically nothing on the brush is hard to do.
Look, I think I've applied too much on this one, to be honest. Can we focus on him?
Yeah, that looks pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, I think down the bottom I put too much. There's a bit of a smudge of white.
What you could do then, if you feel that you've kind of, I don't know, washed out your original color by dry brushing too much or putting too much of that highlight color on, so you can actually go up a highlight from there. Or did you just use Pallid Witch Flesh?
Yep.
So if you wanted, you could take pallid witch flesh, mix a little bit of white in there, and then do what you just did. But I'm telling, when I say like almost no color on the brush, I mean, you're going to mix up the color, you're going to put it on the brush, you're going to dry brush it off, because when you go over with your first pass in the dry brush, you should almost feel like nothing is happening. It's only once you like flick the brush back and forth 10 times and you start seeing color appear a little bit, especially if you're just aiming at the top part of the shield.
Okay, I'll give that a go. This may be the first time I open my actual white color.
Breaking ground.
Oh, no, it's been open before. But that needs a lot more of a shake.
So while you do that, I'm going to quick highlight up my Rhinoxide with, I'm going to use, just straight out of the pot, Doom Bull Brown. I like Rhinoxide as a leather color because you can do a lot of different things with it in terms of like how to highlight it. You can, in terms of like leather colors, you can go with a bestial brown color and go toward more of like an orangey brown color. You can do Doom Bull Brown, which is sort of a reddish brown.
I use Doom Bull for most of my sort of like mouth related things. Yeah.
It's also a good, you had mentioned Baneblade Brown earlier, it's a good starting point for that too, in terms of like mixing color into it. It's cool because you could paint the entire model Rhinoxide and then highlight different parts of it with different brown colors and have a pretty dynamic looking model when you're done. So it's just a good place to start. But in this case, I'll take the easy route and just do Doom Bull Brown.
Okay. Okay. He seems vaguely alright.
Nice.
I don't know, let me see if you can see him. And if you can spot any things that you're like, hey, fix this, you suck.
Nah, dude, I think it looks awesome.
Okay.
If you wanted to try some freehand on that shield, that'd be the place to do it. But for your first foray back into painting.
Yeah, let's just, I don't know, I didn't even think about freehand, to be honest. I would have thought that I would have probably wanted to do freehand earlier. Like as you were saying earlier, sort of put a vague idea of what I wanted to do first. So maybe on, I'm just looking at some of these other models. Like I think this guy's shield might be a good one for it.
Yeah. A little white hand on it or something like that.
That would actually be perfect because of my models, I've got, like I said, the sort of distinctive models. So my blazing glories are like Nazgul on horses.
Yeah.
My Omen is a Nazgul on Fellbeast. My Scourge is a Balrog, and then my Eidolons are actually like Saruman, Wormtongue, a Palantir, one Urukai, and then 2 pillars. It's sort of like a little bit of a diorama and a skirmish base.
That's cool, man.
So I guess technically, thematically, Saruman is my main guy, because he's the only commander, I guess, of all of those models that I've got.
Yeah. Well, it's cool. It's gonna look awesome when it's all painted up. And there you go. First model is done.
See if we can give a final. Yeah. See.
See.
I reckon yours looks very nice as well. Would you theoretically be going more highlight stages up?
Yes and no. Like different parts of it. I would like the brown or the leather. I might go up a little bit more. I like to do really extreme highlights on skin, especially on faces, because that's where I find that if a model pops there, it, just overall, it's where the eye is drawn to. So that's where I spend the most of my time on highlight placements.
Okay. So doing like eyes from here, like normally I would just do like a little bit of white and a black dot.
That's it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's all I would do.
Cool.
And then do what you do.
Yeah, and then if I do it well, the dots look like this facing forwards. And if I do it wrong, it looks like he's looking up here and he's looking down there.
I find it's easiest when I'm doing pupils is to flip the model upside down, because the pupil, like the black part of the pupil, should really be on the upper part of the eye, if that makes sense. Not like dead center in the middle of the eye. So what you can kind of do is use the model as a guide and kind of bring it in.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have any paint on my brush. I don't know why I'm going through the motion of doing it, but yeah, once you paint the white, you then go in with the black dot for the top part of the eye.
I mean, to be honest, most of the time, or a lot of models, the eyes are just so small that it's like, look, this is just a lottery in terms of me having a steady enough hand.
And like 90% of the time, I just paint white and we call it a day. No one's going to be like, wow, the pupils on that look awesome.
I can't do it without doing like so I used the ogres that I started painting, they don't have their eyes done or anything, which seems so stupid when they're such big models. But now I can't even go through, like I'll paint like a gore for a Wildhorn with Beastman, and it's like I can't not do the eyes. If I don't do the eyes, it looks wrong to me.
Right, it's unfinished.
Yeah.
He's blind. My
God. But thank you for your lessons. I'll try and do the rest of them, and I'll probably send you pictures, and we'll maybe work from there. And you might have suggestions. Oh, I still need to do his hair, actually. What color should I... if I did it black, I need like a bit of grey, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm finicky about black. Like, I think that is one color that you could just do like a gray dry brush, but you have to be really light with it. If you're going to highlight it, I almost think you need like an intermediate color. You need to mix black with a gray, or like a gray blue color as a base layer, and then you highlight that with your just straight up gray color.
I mean, it kind of looks okay already. Like I think the white undercoat is showing through a bit, basically, on the top areas.
Well, then that's what I would do. I would take a little bit of gray and a little bit of black, mix it together, and then highlight that black, especially on the upper areas where you see white coming through. I would highlight that with your gray-black color.
Okay.
And then if you're really fancy, you could do one more very sparing highlight of just that pure gray color toward the edges of the hair, like the ends of it where you feel the light would be catching it the most.